Tom Maciowski, M-A-C-Y-A-U-S-K-I.
Thank you. Ms. Seiderman?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, what is your current occupation?
I'm retired.
And what did you do before you retired?
I was a deputy sheriff for Van Buren County.
And how many years were you a deputy sheriff?
29 years here.
And were you a detective at some point as well?
Yes.
When did you become a detective?
I believe the first time was 2007 in narcotics.
And so on January 7th of 2007, were you a detective at that time?
Yeah, I may have misspoken. It was in the 90s that I was a narcotics detective. In 2007, I would have been a criminal investigation detective.
And were you, did you become involved in an investigation involving the death of Todd Stermer at that time on January 7th of 07?
Yes, I did.
And how did you become involved?
I was notified, I believe through dispatch, that there was a fire that occurred out, I believe, on 215, and that there was a subject there at the scene that was deceased and was asked to go to the scene there.
Do you recall approximately around what time you arrived on scene?
I want to say it was around 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Do you recall approximately what time then the fire had occurred?
I do not remember exactly what time or remember when the fire occurred.
So once you were dispatched, did you then proceed to the scene on County Road 215?
Yes, I did.
And what did you observe when you arrived?
When I got there, I could see from the roadway that there was a lot of fire equipment in the form of fire trucks and such down a long driveway that I believe traveled west off of 215. There was a deputy or reservist at the front of the driveway restricting entrance into there.
So was the driveway actually then taped off? Or
it would have been something like that, taped off, or certainly access would have been restricted by the officer that was there.
Then did you walk down the driveway?
I believe, that part I'm not sure whether I parked alongside the shoulder of the driveway or whether I stayed out on the street, but I did walk the majority of the driveway back to the house.
Any of the fire vehicles or emergency vehicles or law enforcement vehicles, were any of them stuck in that driveway?
No.
And did you see a fence at all on the property?
It appeared that there was a fence going around the property. I can't say the exact how much of the acreage was covered by fence, but when you first came in, there was a fence.
And could you see the home at that point enough to then recall what it looked like?
Yes.
And what did the home look like?
It was a two-story home. It was still, when I got there, there was some remnants of being on fire still. Fire crews were still actively working the fire, but it was definitely a two-story residence. If I recall, it was yellow siding on it.
And at that point, did you know what the terrain was with the basement?
At that time, no, not till later.
And once you arrived, did you make contact with anyone from the sheriff's department?
I did.
Who did you make contact with?
Would have been Deputy Verge Franks.
And were you briefed then about the facts that they were aware of at that time?
Yes, he informed me of one being deceased, and stating. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Objection. Hearsay.
Sorry.
Your Honor, I'm just getting a basis for then what his investigation and what was leading him then to then make further investigation. So I'm not offering it for the truth of the matter, just in terms of investigative, the basis of what his knowledge was.
I'll allow it for that purpose.
Thank you. So you were briefed then with Sergeant Franks. Did you also meet with Deputy Evans at that time?
I did.
And do you recall who else was on scene in terms of lay people?
I had been informed that there were neighbors that were on the scene. Mike Matheny, I believe, and his girlfriend at the time, Connie Calhoun.
Did you see them?
I did.
And where were they at?
At the time, they were in a personal vehicle on the property. towards the front of the house.
Did you see the defendant?
No, not at that time.
Did you see her at any time then when you were on the property?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. And did you then make contact with any of the witnesses on scene after your initial briefing?
Yes.
Who did you make contact with?
I made contact with Mike Matheny and Connie Calhoun.
And you spoke to both of them?
I did.
At some point, did you become aware that Todd had been moved from the original location where Deputy Evans found him?
I was informed by Deputy Evans that they had moved Todd Stermer from where he was located at originally to a location further away from the house.
Were you shown where the body was positioned when he was found?
Sorry?
Were you shown by law enforcement where the body was originally found?
Yes.
At that time, were there flags marking that area?
I don't recall.
And did you find any evidence that assisted you in determining that that was in fact the location he was found?
Observation-wise, I did see that there was pooling water or fluid that was stained red at that location. There was also some, I would call it medical waste from people at the ambulance working on Todd Stermer. I believe it may have been rubber gloves or some tubing or things like that.
Did you have an opportunity to view Mr. Todd Stermer while you were on scene?
I did.
And can you describe to the jury then what you viewed and saw?
He was laying on the ground, had several items of clothing placed over him because of the inclement weather at the time. To me, it appeared like he had been burnt. I don't know what his hair looked like before, but it looked like his hair had been mostly burnt. When the medical examiner turned him over onto his side, I could see a large 3 to 4 inch laceration to the back of his skull. His clothing was disheveled. His sweatpants were done around his ankles. He was in stocking feet, just socks on that I saw. Basically, that was it. You could tell his upper chest area had been exposed, but it mostly had been covered up with, from what I later learned, items of clothing that had been placed on him to keep him warm by the Matheny's.
And at the time, was he laying on the ground or was he laying on something else?
That I don't recall. He may have been on a backboard, if I can remember correctly.
Speculating. Just testified he doesn't remember now. He's saying he may have been.
I'll overrule that. I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you observe any, did you smell anything at that point?
I could smell an odor of accelerant gasoline.
How close were you to the body then when you smelled that?
Within, I'd say 6 to 8 inches. That was right there.
Did you remove anything from Todd's body for processing? You talked about all the items.
Yes, I took the items that were covering his body, jackets, shirts, sweatshirts. There was I believe a blanket, a couple of sheets that we determined belonged to the ambulance crew. The clothing items were placed into a brand new, I would call it a garbage bag, for lack of a better term. I took them off and placed them in the bag, which Tony Evans then took possession of. The sweatpants that he was wearing were taken at that time by the fire marshal and taken into evidence by him.
And do you recall what happened? Were there any items that were left on the body then to go in the body bag?
I believe his socks were still on. There was a shirt and underwear, which I remember from the autopsy had been taken out of the body bag.
And then all the other items were packaged separately?
That's correct.
And through your conversations with Mr. Matheny, were you able to determine items that belonged to him?
Yes, Mr. Matheny identified the items that he had placed on Todd Stermer at the time that he had come to that scene.
And that included the items then that went in the clean garbage bag?
That's correct.
Direction form, leading, and it's hearsay.
I will sustain as deleting.
What items did you put in the garbage bag?
I can remember a few items. I can't remember from that far back every item, but I know that there was a sweatshirt. There was a jacket that was like a Carhartt coat or similar to that. There was, I want to say, another shirt or something of that nature, but a couple of jackets or coats that I couldn't remember. I'd have to look and see what I put in a report to state item for item.
Would it help refresh your memory if I showed you your report?
Sure.
Once you get a chance to refresh your memory, if you could just turn those over and then I'll ask you again. Did that help refresh your memory?
Yes.
And I'll just ask you, what items then did you take and put into the clean garbage bag?
Okay. It would have been a maroon colored jacket, a tan colored Carhartt style coat, a black and white plaid long sleeve shirt, and a brown hoodie type sweatshirt.
Do you recall the location of the shirt that you said went into the body, where that was located on Todd's body?
I don't.
And once you put those items in the garbage bag, what did you do with them?
I turned them over to Deputy Evans to place an evidence hold on to for any further processing that may be needed.
And then did you do anything with the items that were left on the body?
No, I did not, that I recall.
And did you view Sergeant Leroy then take possession of, I believe you said, the sweatpants?
I did.
And who was Scott Leroy on scene at that time? What was his title?
State Police District Fire Marshal.
After you observed Todd and the condition of his body, were you able to walk around the scene?
I was.
And what did you observe as you were walking around the scene?
Where the house was at when you first pulled up, the long driveway comes out and it's like an open area in front of the house. And then I can't attest a lot memory-wise the east side of the house, but the west side of the house does seem to slope downward. That would be honestly the northwest side. It's like an embankment that goes down around to the back of the house. The house appeared to have at one point had a balcony, but there was a cement slab on the back, like a walkout from the basement. It's difficult to say how it looked up above in the front because there was, like I said, so many emergency vehicles and stuff there. But basically nothing as you're going down the northwest side of the house. It was pretty blanketed. I believe there was a fence along the west end covering the back of the house back there. I observed a brown van that was parked behind the house on the northwest side, and the vehicle was running. I'd been told by Deputy Evans that the vehicle was in that location when he arrived and that it was running at that time.
And it was still running then when you looked at it?
That is correct.
How did you know it was running?
It was cold out. You could see the exhaust and you could hear it running.
Did you observe on the north side of the home, and because I'm directionally challenged, I'm going to say when you're looking at the front of the house to the right, did you observe if there was any pathways in that yard?
I can't remember that there was necessarily a pathway. I do remember where Deputy Evans showed me where the body of Todd Stermer originally was, and you could see where the van was located, kind of like a trail going from there, from where the body was at, down to where the van was at.
From the front yard driveway to where the body was there any improved trail or driveway leading to the body?
No, there was nothing that I saw that looked like a regular driveway that went down back behind the house.
I'm sorry, what was that?
There was no appearance that I could see of a driveway that went from the front of the house down the side of the house, which would be the north side, around to the west or back of the house.
What was the terrain or the makeup of the side yard there?
Near as I can remember, it was kind of like grass and dirt for the most part.
Did you see a shed on the property?
I don't recall.
And I want to talk to you about a little more about those tire impressions that you looked at. You said that you were able to see the direction of the tire tracks from the body to the backyard?
Yes.
And you were able to see those clearly?
Yes.
And did they appear to just be one continuous motion?
Yes.
And was it clear that the tire tracks you were looking at from the body to the back of the house, was it clear that those were not made by emergency vehicles or fire trucks?
It's leading to, so I'll sustain.
Were you able to determine tracks that were made by emergency vehicles and by fire trucks?
I'm going to say no. The upper area in front of the house was a mishmash of vehicles everywhere. The only place that I could see anything definite was from that location where I was shown Todd Stermer to originally have been laying to where the van was parked. There was only one set of tracks that you could make out that were going from that location to the back of that van.
To the back of the van?
I saw no other crisscross traffic or anything like that. It was just one clear set of tracks.
And at that time, were there flags placed?
There was.
And where were the flags placed?
I believe they were placed on the on the outer side of the tire tracks, and there may have been flags placed where Deputy Evans had stated Todd Stermer was at when he had located him.
Did you examine the tire tracks to see if there was any evidence of a vehicle being stuck?
I did not notice any. In looking at somebody who gets stuck in a track, there's going to be a lot of spinning and dirt or mud or whatever flying up from that. There will be a rut. I saw no ruts. I saw no dirt flung about or anything like that. I just saw the two tire track trails going to the vehicle.
And did you take some photos while you were on scene?
I may have.
I want to just talk to you a little bit about that van. You saw that it was running and it was the exhaust, correct?
Yes, I walked around the van while it was there.
And did you take note of the license plate and the VIN number?
Yes, at the time I was there, I did record the VIN number and the license plate from the van.
Were you able to determine then from those two things who owned the van?
I believe it was registered to Todd Stermer.
Did you see what was in the van at that time?
I made brief observations. I did not go inside the van, but I could see through the windows.
What did you see then through the windows?
I saw that the key was in the ignition and the vehicle was running. I believe I saw a black purse laying on the floorboards of the passenger side. Looking in, the van was kind of in disarray. There's a lot of stuff in there. Not making particularly any note of anything other than seeing a purse in there and the keys in the ignition running.
Did you notice anything unusual about the exterior of the van?
Yes, when I walked around the van, in the front of the van, there is a plastic skirt that goes under the bumper, and then above that is a chrome bumper. On the driver's side, there was red staining on the plastic skirting, and then above that there was a little bit of red staining on the bumper on the driver's side of the vehicle.
What was done with that van?
At that time, it was, I believe it went from raining to snowing, and at that point it had been determined that the van was going to be needed for further processing, so a wrecker company was called and the vehicle was loaded onto a flatbed type wrecker and was transported to, I believe, Decatur Towing, and had been placed inside their facility there at Decatur Towing until such time that a search warrant could be obtained to go through the inside of the vehicle and further analysis on the outside.
At some point then you had said that there were people that were blocking the driveway when you came in.
Yes, there was a deputy at the front of the entrance there.
Was the scene secured then throughout the evening?
To my knowledge, somebody was there until the scene was released.
Which would have been when?
I do not remember.
Were you present then when the van was examined at Decatur Towing?
I was.
And did you take pictures of the van?
I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 29. And there are 13 photos with exhibit number 29. If you could just take a look at these photos and tell me if you recognize them. Do you recognize those photos?
Yes,
And why do you recognize those?
they appear to be photos that I took. at
Changed
this-
or altered in any way?
Not that I recall, no.
Your Honor, the people would move to admit People's Exhibit number 29 into evidence at this time.
Court will receive Exhibit 29.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Thank you. Did you go through the interior of the van, those contents?
I did.
And did you go through the purse that was located on the passenger side?
I did.
And what did you find in the purse?
Inside the purse, lots of various items, but there was a wallet. There was ID for, I believe, Linda Stermer. And I believe cash-wise, there was $202.
So there's $202 in cash in there?
I believe so.
Did you get an opportunity to see what was behind the front seat row?
I did look throughout the van, and between the passenger and driver's seat, I found I call it a portfolio, but it's like an envelope, a big envelope that you put things in. As I recall, it had a wallet in there, or I think it was a leather wallet of some kind. The back of the van was filled with multiple boxes of gloves, which I later understood was a side business that Mr. Stermer and Mrs. Stermer were involved in. I think was selling of gloves to hardware stores, things like that, but there was a lot of packages of gloves back there.
Was the van pretty full in the back?
Yes, yes.
And did you attend the autopsy on January 8th of 2007?
I did.
And that was with Dr. Markey?
I'm sorry?
Was that with Dr. Markey?
Yes.
At that time, did you take possession of any of the clothing that came in the body bag?
I did.
Do you recall what items you took possession of?
I took possession of 2 socks, a shirt, a pair of underwear, and I believe they also issued me what we would refer to as a DNA card, a sample of DNA from the deceased, and that would have been turned over to me as well.
And what did you do then with those items?
They were transported back to the Van Buren County Sheriff's Office, and I believe at some point were turned over to the fire marshal, as well as I believe the DNA card was turned over to the crime lab for comparison analysis to samples that they had taken that same day of the search warrant of the van.
Were you the one that packaged up those items?
I don't recall. They were placed in, I call them evidence cans. They look like paint cans, but they're silver, unused. And each item was placed into one of those paint cans, for lack of a better term, evidence can, and by the Dr. Markey and staff, and then recorded and handed over to me. And they were sealed at that location as well.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted. I'm going to show you what's been admitted as People's Exhibit number 25. And do you recognize that?
Yes, there's more labels on it than what I remember, but the label I do remember is of the autopsy lab number, which is a small sticker on here, A071024, Todd Stermer, content socks. That I do remember, and would be what they handed me that day at the autopsy.
So these are what you're referring to as containers?
Yes,
Containers
they
of
look like paint cans. Yes, ma'am.
When you were, I apologize, I forgot to ask you this question. When you were underneath the van taking pictures, the Michigan State Police Crime Lab was there as well, correct?
Yes.
Did you see any evidence? I'm gonna stop. You talked about the looking at the treads on the ground to see if there was any evidence of somebody being stuck. Did you see any evidence of the van being stuck when you were underneath the van taking pictures?
Objection calls him to speculate what he would see underneath a van to see if it was stuck a day before in whatever terrain.
I'll overrule it. I don't think it's speculation.
In observing the van out there, I did not see, both at the scene and at the search warrant, did not see what you would consider big clumps of dirt, mud stuck all over the van where it would appear that it was stuck or had been, if you've ever been stuck, rocking the vehicle back and forth, moving it back and forth, and getting large amounts of matter stuck up in it. There was, the tires at the time I'd seen them were wet and did have dirt on them, but it's more like muddy water than it would be clumps of soil, if that makes any sense, observation-wise.
At some point in your investigation, did you become aware that the defendant went to the Marathon station in Lawrence?
Yes.
And what did you do upon receiving that information?
I went to the Village Marathon in Lawrence. I did meet with the owner, Sue Oppold, and I requested from her, knowing that they did have video at that location, did request videotapes, VHS type from that location, which was their type of surveillance at the time, and also for the tape register for the purchases that may have occurred at that time, and she did supply those to me.
Were you able to then review the VHS tapes?
I did.
And did you see anything of any evidentiary value on those tapes?
I did not.
And why is that?
The time frame established to where Ms. Stermer had been at the marathon You could see transactions before that, but at the time frame or shortly before that time frame, it stopped showing video of actions at the store and just went to what I call snow, like, you know, when the TV show's off the air. It just went blank, so to speak, and that was the end of it. I did take them to the Sheriff's Department in Kalamazoo County, where they have, back at that time, video analysis, where they would look at things, and had them look at the videotapes as well, and there was nothing there that they could recover or get from those videotapes.
There was just nothing in that time frame that you needed or could find?
No, there was not.
And you said you were able then to collect tape of some sort?
The register tape from the transactions of that day and what was purchased and what time and things like that.
What's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 30-1 and 30-2. I'll start out with 30-1. Do you recognize this item?
Yeah, this appears to be the cash register tape roll from the Lawrence Marathon that I received from the owner.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was back on 2/1 of 2007.
And that's when you received it?
That's correct. I believe it's when I received it.
2/1 of 07?
February. Well, that's what I have dated here from Sue Oppel to Detective Sergeant Masiowski, 2/1 of 2007.
And has it been altered or changed in any way?
It appears to look like the same tape. It's been some time, but yes.
And those are your initials on the outside of the packaging?
That is, well, you say initials.
Or your name or signature?
It is my name printed on the chain of custody on the first receiving of it.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as 30-2. Do you recognize this item?
Yes, it's a copy of the receipt that was determined to be on the roll that was here in this package from the Lawrence Marathon for the transaction that occurred using what would be Todd Stermer's MasterCard on the date of 1/7/2007.
Your Honor, this time I move to admit People's Exhibit number 30, including both -30-1 and 30-2 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Court will receive 31 and 32.
And just so the record is clear, there are 2 exhibit stickers, one dated of 2007 and one dated for today on the packaging.
Okay.
Once you got that tape, you were able to then go through that tape?
Yes,
And did you determine then the relevant transaction or what may be of interest to you at that time?
I believe so, yes.
And that's where then the copy was made of the individual receipt?
That's correct.
Once you then collected that tape, you took the pictures of the van, and you examined the scene. Can you tell the jury then what your involvement was other than those items?
After doing that part of investigation, it would have been then follow up to any information that we may have come into contact with, follow-up interviews with people, basically information that came in either through evidence or through people we would have followed up on and assigned people to do just that, interviews or collect items, keep in touch with the prosecutor's office and for their input and proceeding with the case.
So if you received tips,
We received, through interviews, people would provide information, and then from that information, we would follow up and see where that would lead as well.
as part of your follow-up, did you interview Cynthia DeLoach?
I did.
And who was she?
Cynthia DeLoach was a clerk at the Lawrence Marathon at the time that those items had been, that were seen on that receipt using the credit card of Todd Stermer. She was the clerk that was working that day when those items were purchased.
You interviewed Chris Williams?
I did.
Did you interview Trevor Stermer,
I believe I did.
Trenton Stermer?
I believe I did.
Interviewed Dardita Gordon?
I believe I did as well.
And where did you interview Dardita Gordon at?
It would have been at the Van Buren County Jail.
So she was incarcerated at that time?
I believe she was.
Can you describe the demeanor of Dardita Gordon at the time you interviewed her?
I use the word guarded, but it could be kind of, she was willing to speak with me, but she was kind of nervous at the same time.
And did you share details of the scene, the investigation, and any evidence that you had with Dardita prior to your interview?
Objection form.
I'll overrule that and I'll allow it.
It's difficult to say, it's been so long ago, as far as report-wise, as to what I did and did not say to her at that point, other than informing her that I had heard she had heard something within the jail in regards to Miss Stermer or Mrs. Stermer, and asked her to tell me what she had heard.
And at that time, you were a trained detective, correct?
Yes.
And as part of your interviewing training, would you have told somebody pertinent details before they actually told you what you were talking to them about?
We don't give specific facts that we have. If per se it's something that we know and we want to find out if that person actually did know it, they'd have the same information. So we probably really would not give them exact information that we knew for fact. We would wait to see if they verified that fact.
And then once they verify that fact, then you may ask additional questions.
Correct.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Mueller?
Give me 1 second, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Let me start out by asking you a little bit about the information you learned on the scene, okay?
Yes, sir.
At first, as I understand it, you learned your information from Detective Evans, Officer Evans?
My first contact, I believe, at the scene was with Sergeant Franks,
Franks.
who directed me to Deputy
Evans.
Evans. I'm sorry.
Okay. And then you learned from Deputy Evans where he thought Todd Stermer had initially been, is that right?
He took me to where he had found him at, yes.
All right, where Deputy Evans found Todd Stermer.
That's what he told me.
Are you aware that Deputy Evans did not arrive on the scene until after Todd Stermer was moved from his initial position to his final position?
Your Honor, facts not in evidence.
It's already been testified to.
It's misconstruing the testimony, Your Honor.
Your
It's
Honor,
not facts and evidence.
Jury has notes.
Okay. I'll allow you to rephrase it to consistent with what's in evidence.
You're not aware, are you, of whether Deputy Evans came to the scene after Todd Stermer was moved?
My recollection is that when I spoke to Deputy Evans, he had told me that this location where he showed me was where Todd Stermer was at, and that he and others had moved him. He as well had moved him from that area, was my recollection.
Do you have any photographs to show us that?
No, I do not.
Did you put that in your report? Exactly where Todd Stermer had been?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look back at it. I may have made mention of where I was shown by Deputy Evans, but I'm not sure.
But you can't help us, as we sit here today, pinpoint where Todd Stermer may have originally been. Is that fair?
I was not there when he was moved, no.
Now let's talk about your van inspection. That happened the day before, correct?
I'm sorry,
I mean, the day after the incident.
are you referring to the search warrant?
Yes.
Okay.
Van hold
That
on.
was, I'm sorry,
The van inspection, we'll call it that.
I call it the search warrant of the van if it was, while it was inside the towing agency.
Fair enough. You had gotten a search warrant, am I right?
Again, I'm not sure. It's been some time. I know that I did, the day after being called to that scene, I was present the following day at a autopsy for Todd Stermer. The day after that was the search warrant at the towing company. As to did I author the search warrant, I do not remember.
When you were the officer in charge of this case, am I right?
I was a case officer. If in that respect, I had superiors as well. And certainly the initial evening of the incident, Lieutenant Brian Stump was in charge of the scene.
But somebody eventually is assigned as officer in charge of the case.
Yes,
Would that have been you?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, so you're the one who's in charge of marshaling all the evidence, am I right?
Again, other people can be handed off and be made responsible for items and things like that under the direction that I give them, or I myself, for certain piece of items of evidence, may be responsible for those as well.
I don't want to confuse us, but typically there's somebody has to be in charge of the case. Can't have 20 people all running willy-nilly doing their thing.
Yes, that's true.
So you're kind of the quarterback of that case, correct?
I guess that'd be a way of putting it.
And you were the quarterback of this case, correct?
Okay?
Yes?
Sure.
Okay. So you attend a van inspection, a search warrant inspection on January 9.
That is true.
Right. A search warrant is issued when there's suspected to be a crime, correct?
Yeah, we don't have consent for the search of that van. We must take and articulate reasons why we want to search that van.
Okay, so when you saw blood on the front bumper or the skirt, you said, of that van, you thought something's odd here, right?
Yes,
And so you suspected there might be a crime, right?
certainly warranting investigation.
Okay, and that's what drove the search warrant for the van.
Yes,
Right. Now, you went to the garage, correct?
yes. If
And
you're referring to the tow company,
Decatur Tow Company?
yep,
It was inside, right?
yes.
So it's room temperature, right?
I cannot tell you if it was it was just out of the elements, I know that.
Inside, were you wearing a winter coat?
I do not remember what I was wearing that day.
Typically, if it's inside and it's roughly about room temperature, roughly about 70 degrees, right?
Again, I cannot remember what the temperature was in that room at that time.
You would certainly expect that tires, after being inside for 2 days, would not have snow, and that would account for the tires being wet.
It was
and
dry.
dirty.
It was definitely dry, yes.
Okay. Now, this vehicle is a 1993 Ford Econoline van, correct?
Okay. I say that because I know it's a Ford van. I know it's brown. I don't remember the year without looking at a report.
You have your van inspection report, don't you, or no?
I have nothing up here.
Let me see if I can refresh your memory. May I approach, Your Honor?
I don't mean to appear offstandish. It's been that long. I don't remember.
18 years, right?
Yes, so it's appreciate the
Yep.
help.
Happy to give. On the first page, it said, it should be noted that the vehicle is a 1990.
I'm going to object that it's not the proper way of recollection or of refreshing someone's memory.
I'll ask you to take a look at the vehicle.
Sir, let me make a rule. Okay?
I'm sorry.
The objection sustained.
Good. I'll ask you to take a look at where it says vehicle on page 1, on the bottom.
Yes, sir.
Are you with me?
I am.
What kind of vehicle was it?
It's a 1993 Ford Econoline van, full size.
Full-size van. You recall it was a rear-wheel drive van.
I believe it was.
Rear-wheel drive van, full-size, roughly about 4,500 pounds, if you understand what vans weigh.
You got me on that one on weights and measures of vehicles, but it's a full size van.
Which you would expect weighs over 2 tons, don't you think?
I honestly, I couldn't tell you what my own vehicle weighed, but it's a full size big van.
And do you recall the condition of the rear tires?
Rear tires that were on the vehicle? I mean, as opposed to the spare back there, or I'm not
That's
sure which.
correct.
You mean the ones that are actually on the vehicle?
There are 4 tires
Yes,
on the vehicle.
yes.
I'm asking you about the 2 rear tires on the vehicle, not the spare. Do you recall the condition of those tires?
I believe I did make note of that. I do not recall, but I did make note of the condition of those tires and the types of each tire.
Happy to refresh your memory if you look at page 3 of your report at the top paragraph. Let me know when you're there.
Yes, I've read that top section.
What was the condition of the rear tires?
They were worn.
Worn rear tires on a rear-wheel drive van that is 14 years old at that time.
Okay, I didn't do the math on it, but the 2 tires to the front were definitely newer condition, notable than the ones to the back.
You did note the type of tires that were on the vehicle, correct?
I did.
Can you tell us what tires were on the vehicle?
If you,
I'll direct you to page 2
okay.
at the bottom.
Thank you. Okay, if it's permissible, I will read that the front driver's side tire was identified as a Uniroyal Tiger Paw, noted as a P235/75R15. The rear driver's side tire was identified as a Dunlop Radial Rover, noted as a P235/75R15. Number 3, the front passenger tire was identified as a National 400 XT, noted as a PR235/75R15. And the last rear tire was identified, or that being the rear passenger side tire, was identified as a Dunlop Radial Rover, noted as P235/75R15. So that both rear tires on that van were of the same make and model, both being Dunlop Radial Rovers, and the front tires were of 2 different types of brand.
So for 4 wheels, we have 3 different kinds of tires, am I right?
That is correct.
In looking at what was marked as Exhibit 29, do you have those pictures up?
I only have this report that you've given me up here.
May I approach, Your Honor? I'm going to give you those photos.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm also going to give you photos that we have marked as Exhibit E 1 to 4. And ask if my photos match up as part of your photos, and they should.
In observing the photos from the People's Exhibit and the photos that you handed me just now, noting that it has kind of part of my name on them, they can be the same photo. They appear to have been enlarged, and by development or whatever, the colors are not exactly the same as what I'm seeing in each picture, but I can say that they reflect the same imagery. And I don't have this one. I'm not sure what, it could have been a label on the outside of the vehicle, I'm guessing, but.
If that was from the door, if that was part.
Okay, I could have taken that picture.
Is the council testifying where that came from? This would witness has no recollection of where that picture's from.
Let me set this up, if I may.
Prosecutor, have you seen these photos? I assume you're
I'm
moving
going to
to
move for their
admit them.
admission, just 1 second, including
Okay,
that last one.
prosecutor, have you seen them?
I don't know what he's looking at, Your Honor, and I
Okay.
believe he's testifying as to, I haven't seen what he's shown him.
I already told you it's Exhibit E, which you have.
Prosecutor, you do or don't have them?
We do have him in digital form, Your Honor.
Okay.
I wasn't sure what he was showing him at this time.
You also photographs? 4 photographs. You also have them in book form. I gave them to you.
Okay. So you know what he's showing
No,
this
we do,
witness?
yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mueller?
You'd have taken a picture of the vehicle information on the vehicle, right?
I would say that's highly likely. I
Okay.
just,
So these 4 photographs that I'm showing you represent the vehicle that you inspected on January 9. Fair?
that's fair?
Okay, I move for the admission of Exhibit E.1 to 4.
It's cumulative, Your Honor, and I don't think he has recognized these particular pictures as pictures he took. I believe counsel said you searched and you took pictures, but we haven't identified that he recognizes these pictures. I feel he's already testified that he doesn't recognize the sticker, so I do have an objection at this time.
Well, Your Honor, photographs for admissibility just have to represent fairly and accurately what was being represented in the photograph, and those include the vehicle that he inspected.
Yeah, I agree. He doesn't have to be the one to have taken those photos, but I do have concern about the one, I don't know that you've laid a foundation for this one with the tab on it. Yeah, maybe question
Let
him
me just
some
ask
more.
you, on that vehicle, would that comport with the vehicle you were expecting? You can look at the vehicle information.
Your Honor, it still doesn't meet the foundation that that's what he saw on the van.
Your report would include a VIN number, wouldn't it?
That's what I'm searching for right now in this report that you gave me, to see if I had recorded the VIN number in the report.
Let's look at page 1 where it says vehicle.
I'm reading right now that section, sir. And the VIN number that I recorded on my report does match the VIN number placed on this image that you handed to me. So it is the same VIN number
Move for
that I
the-
could testify to.
Move for the admission of Exhibit E1 to 4.
Right, Irene?
No objection now. I believe that the proper foundation has been laid.
Okay, we'll receive. What'd you say, E1 through 4, Mr. Mueller? Would you title those, E1 through 4?
E1 to 4.
1 to 4?
Yes,
Okay, so
thank
we'll
you.
admit those.
I'll show you, sir. I just want to show you. You already saw that photograph, right?
Yes,
Counsel showed you. Prosecutor showed you.
I can't hear you.
Prosecutor showed you that photograph. Remember, you talked about it?
Yes, I
All right.
believe I have it in front of me.
That's the photograph you took of the front end, correct?
It appears to be
Well, it matches one of your photos, doesn't it?
true. My statement in why I'm referring is that the MSP also was out there taking pictures at the same time. This being one of my photos, if it's so, it is so that it's mine.
Okay. It shows the blood on the front skirt, correct, in the front. Yes?
I identified it as a red stain at the time.
Red stain. Do you see any red stains on the left fender?
On the fender?
Yes.
No, I can't say that I do.
Yeah. If there had been stains on the left fender, you would have noted that, wouldn't you?
If I saw them, yes.
Did you have a tape measure at all?
While I was there,
Yes.
not certain that I did or didn't.
Okay. You can't help us with how far off the ground that lower skirt is,
No, I can't.
other than maybe knowing the radius of the tires?
The type and tire that, yeah, I recorded that.
Okay. Basically, the lower skirt comes about halfway up that tire, right?
It appears that way in the image.
Okay. You remember the temperature? Well, you arrived at 5 p.m. You remember that at the scene?
I did arrive around that time.
Okay. And it was light rain and snow at the time. You remember that?
I believe when I first got there, there was rain that turned to snow, yes.
You said there was a mishmash of fire trucks and EMT vehicles in that front area, correct?
In the front, would have been the east side of the house. There were a lot of emergency vehicles there, yes.
A lot.
Well, I mean, compared to never, I guess there may have been 2 or 3. There was certainly an ambulance. There was more than one fire truck there. I can't attest to other police vehicles without some kind of imagery, but it seemed very busy.
All fighting the fire or treating Todd Stermer.
I would presume so. I saw the firemen working the fire, but I don't know what the emergency personnel were doing.
You don't know what tire tracks were in the front area of the house, front northeast corner of the house at 3:30 p.m., fair?
No.
Seeing as you got there at 5,
Right.
and there's a mishmash of fire trucks right in that area.
In the front of the house, yeah.
And you did not take the 1993 Ford Econoline van and do any testing to determine what type of, with poor tires, in muddy conditions, what type of traction it might get, fair? You didn't do any of that.
I didn't do any tests of, no.
Okay. You didn't take an exemplar. You know what an exemplar is?
No, I don't.
A similar van, 1993, and try to run any tests to see what kind of traction it might have, fair?
No, I did not.
So as you sit here, you have no evidence for us that can rule out that given the tire condition, given the weather conditions, the terrain, that Linda Stermer might have lost traction. You can't rule that out, can you?
I saw no evidence of anybody getting stuck, but I mean, as far as loss of traction, I'm not sure I follow what you mean.
Loss of traction to where Linda Stermer might go in another direction than where she intended to at first. You have no evidence for us.
Speculating at this point, I would prefer that he just ask questions of the detective.
This is cross-examination. I can ask a leading question.
It is, leading's okay, but this, it does call for
Right.
speculation.
You'd be speculating to say, one way or another, whether there's any evidence that Linda Stermer had lost traction, right?
In fairness, what location are we talking about? Up above in front of the house?
Correct.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay. That'd be pure speculation. Fair?
I cannot even speculate. I don't know what happened up there on the top section, or the northeast section on top where the driveway was. I don't know.
And in terms of what you learned, you did not see Linda Stermer, correct?
Don't believe I did, no.
But you heard of people and talked to people who had seen Linda Stermer, correct?
Yes, I did.
And described the situation and the chaos?
In the interviews that I conducted out there was from the time those people arrived on scene, what they saw, what they did, and that was referred to me, yes.
And you learned, learned about the chaos that was going on.
From their perspective, yes.
And what their observations of Linda Stermer, how she was behaving. You learned that, correct?
I would have to it's been a long time, refer to a report that said I don't remember what they portrayed Linda Stermer as being at that time.
If she was described as hysterical, that would be
Your Honor, I believe it's asked and answered. He doesn't know, and now we're continuing then to put words in the witness's mouth.
It's a leading question, and I can explore his memory.
It's already asked and answered, Your Honor.
I'll allow one more time.
Thank you. If she was described as hysterical, sir, that would be consistent with somebody who had been fleeing a fire
This is
for her life.
speculation.
Sustain at this point, please move on, Mr. Miller.
You said there was some fuel smell, a fuel type smell you smelled?
Yes,
And that's after you got there and you said you came 6 to 8 inches from Todd Stermer?
yeah, I believe I knelt down there, looking at him, the position he was on at that time.
Okay, where did you look? He's close to 6 feet tall. Were you looking at his chest, 6 to 8 inches? Were you looking at his face, check 6 to 8 inches? Where?
Recollection-wise, I would have observed him as close as I could, within reasonableness, and along from the head of him to the toe of him, kind of looked him over.
So you would have gotten, he's on the ground, right?
Yes, he is.
You would have gotten on your knees,
Yes, I would have.
and you would have gotten between about 6 to 8 inches from his whole body?
Well, when you put it this close, maybe this would be better.
What would be better, 18 to 24
12
inches?
inches, 12 inches. I mean, I didn't climb on top of him by any means, but I did get close enough where I could smell, for lack of a better term, and not being able to positively identify the fuel, I would call it an accelerant, if you would, or a gassy smell.
You can
Gasoline.
distinguish gas from anything else?
Again, to sit here and say I could tell gasoline from kerosene or any other kind of fuel, whether it's diesel or not, I would have difficulty in pinpointing beyond saying fuel.
Okay, we'll just call it fuel, because I don't want you to speculate and narrow it if you can't, okay?
I cannot, but
All right.
thank you.
You got there, you're smelling this, and the clothes are still on him, correct?
Yes.
And the clothes are covering his private area and around his groin?
This would have still been in the time that clothing items were being removed
But you
from
were there.
him. From standpoint of when I first made contact to the point of removing clothes, the smell of fuel was there.
Okay. Now, if you wanted to know what did Todd Stermer smell like when the first people arrived before you got there, you with me? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Before I got there,
If you wanted to know what he smelled like, would it be reasonable to ask the people who were first there whether they smelled any fuel? That sound reasonable?
I don't know that I asked that question.
Didn't ask you that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Does it sound reasonable to you?
Sure.
If you wanted to know what he smelled like first, you'd ask the people who were there before you.
Sure.
Now, the clothing you took, and the people who were there before you, Mr. Matheny, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Calhoun, correct?
Yes.
And did you see a Dr. Richard Masali?
No, I don't remember seeing Dr. Masali.
Do you know who he was?
I believe he's a dentist that
He is a
lives
dentist.
nearby, and I think he has a practice in Decatur.
Okay.
I don't know him per se. I wouldn't know him on site.
You just don't remember him being there when you were there.
I don't remember seeing him or speaking with him right at that moment, no.
If the testimony is that he was one of the first 3 people there, Mr. Matheny, Ms. Calhoun, and Dr. Masali, it'd be smart to ask them what they smelled, if you wanted to know what he smelled like. Sound reasonable?
I see what you're saying. I look at it, I guess I'm going from a standpoint, I know what he smelled like, so I didn't ask other people what they smelled when they got there.
I just asked would it be reasonable to ask those 3.
I guess so.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the clothing. You said you put the clothes that you saw on Todd in a bag.
The items that were pointed out to me that Mr. I'll make myself clear here. The items that Mr. Matheny said he had identified and told me he had placed on there, I took those items off of Mr. Stermer and put them in a bag with Deputy Evans. I believe the sheets, which I think there were 2, and a blanket that were provided by it was determined that they were provided by the ambulance, were returned to the ambulance by Detective Lieutenant Stump, as I recall.
The clothes you put, you said you described it as a garbage bag.
Yes.
All right, so you put all those clothes, there could be evidence in this case, you understand?
Yes, I do.
All right, and you put all those clothes in one bag, is that right?
I did.
Are you an evidence technician?
I am.
Do you know the policy back then in 2007 of how you're supposed to separate evidence?
I believe I do. I guess my reasoning at the time was that those items had been placed on there by Mr. Matheny and weren't the original items he was coming out of the house in. So those items were placed by Mr. Matheny, and my way of thinking at that time was that they could all be together for analysis.
Even though they were potentially evidence,
Okay. Yes.
right?
Yes.
And typically evidence, if you're going to have separate items, should be bagged separately, correct?
Again, I explained my reasoning for why they weren't, but
They should be bagged separately, at least according
if
to...
you say so. I don't recall, not to be argumentative, I went with my train of reasoning at that time.
Understand your reasoning, but the policy would be, by the Van Buren County Sheriff's Office, would be to bag items of potential evidence separately. Fair?
I could not tell you the policy of the sheriff's department as far as evidence collection.
Okay, because you didn't know it.
I don't remember it.
Now, you mentioned speaking to Ms. DeLoach,
Yes,
Cynthia DeLoach, the attendant at the gas station?
yes, I do.
When you spoke to Mr. Matheny and Ms. Calhoun, it was on the scene, January 7, 2007, correct?
Yes,
Probably within a couple hours, right, while they're still on the scene.
I think so.
Yes?
Yes,
And the reason you did that, because the main purpose of interviewing people right as close to in time as you can is to make sure you get their best memory. Fair?
sure,
Because you know memory fades over time,
sure.
especially if there's something that may not even affect you, right?
It can certainly go from person to person.
Okay. You received the receipts on February 1 of 2007, am I right?
February
Those-
7th, 2007. Yeah, yes,
Those gas station receipts we saw.
sure.
You did not speak to Cynthia DeLoach for almost 2.5 years. Do you remember that?
That is correct.
June 11, 2009, correct?
Correct.
Then you asked her, what was your memory from January 7, 2007, correct?
Not word specific, but I certainly interviewed her as to that time, yes.
And would you have remembered Linda Stermer from 2.5 years ago, correct?
I'm sorry, could you ask again?
You had the subject matter of, would you have remembered Linda Stermer at this gas station from 2.5 years ago?
Would I, or would she? For me, I guess I
Poor
would say...
question. Let me rephrase it.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I don't mean to fight with you.
No, I don't want to fight either.
No, I'm not.
I want to be clear.
Your subject matter would be, Ms. DeLoach, do you remember Linda Stermer being here on January 7, 2007, almost 2.5 years ago? That would have been general subject matter.
Again, not exact questioning, but certainly would have been the topic.
And you can certainly inspect, she was not in the middle of the fire, as far as you know.
Cindy DeLoach?
Yes.
No, she wasn't there that I
Okay.
know.
So she's remote from the incident, correct?
Correct?
And it didn't directly affect her, this fire, correct?
I couldn't say what, you know.
Okay. So 2.5 years later, you might expect that her memory won't be so good. Fair?
Again, I can't speculate as to her memory recollection of things.
But typically, people's memories fade. Yes? Yours has, over 18 years,
18 years, certainly I don't remember everything.
which is, again, the main purpose of getting information as soon as you can would be to make sure the memory is fresh. Fair?
Absolutely.
And your reason for not doing it in February of 2007 was because you were busy with other things and you overlooked it, right?
It certainly would have been an overlooking of one of the interviews.
Of a key witness. Where was Linda Stermer the day of the fire?
I would say yes.
Have you ever been a field training officer?
No.
Have you ever trained any officers?
In certain things,
Like what?
I was basically putting it hand-to-hand combat instructor for the department.
Okay.
Other things, I used to teach alcohol, drug driving detection.
But you've been a detective, right?
Sure.
Would you accept the reason from a rookie detective you might be overseeing, hey, boss, I didn't interview this key witness because I was just too busy.
When you put it in that respect, it assumes that the person knew they were supposed to do it and just didn't do it because they got busy.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that the person, if the person has said, you know, I totally forgot, I was busy doing this, that, I forgot to do this, my reaction may be totally different to them if I was a supervisor.
Well, you were a veteran police officer at the time.
Okay?
You knew Cynthia DeLoach would have been a key witness in this case as to where Linda Stermer was on January 7, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes, yes.
And your testimony in a prior hearing was, I overlooked it because I was just too busy.
Your Honor, we're getting into asked and answered. I think he's asked this several times.
Answered.
Sir? I don't know if I got a direct answer to the question. Would you accept that excuse, I was too busy to interview a key
Well,
witness?
Mr. Mueller, you've already asked the question, it's been
Thank
answered.
you. Oh, you were aware at least of the evidence storage policies of the Van Buren County Sheriff's Office in 2007, I imagine, right?
I could say so, yes.
Having been a detective,
Okay.
yes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. From February 1 of 2007, when you picked up those tapes that we saw, the cash receipts,
Mm-hmm.
to January 11, the day you interviewed Cynthia DeLoach, those receipts were not in the evidence room of the Van Buren County Sheriff's Office, were they?
No, they were not.
They were in your office, correct?
That is correct.
Is there a policy that allows detectives to keep critical evidence for 2.5 years in their office without putting it in and logging it in storage with the property room?
I could not tell you that specific. I can only tell you why I had those items, but I can't tell you what the specific policy of the Van Buren County Sheriff's Office is towards items of evidence. If I'm working a case and I want those items in my possession, I don't think I've ever been told no. Check them in, check them out, check them in, check them out.
You have to log in evidence for chain of custody reasons, don't you?
Yes,
Just so we, being the criminal defendant, the prosecutor, can make sure there is an appropriate chain of custody, right?
that's true.
You've learned that, correct?
Sure.
And Van Buren County Sheriff's Office has that policy, correct?
I don't know.
You didn't-
Again, I've been retired for a while, and it's been a while since I remember, but for me to say, what do they call it, quote and verse, I couldn't tell you. It is important to take your evidence and put it in an evidence room and log who's got it, when they've got it, if it's in, it's out, as long as you can follow that chain of custody.
Okay. In this case, there was no official chain of custody for those two receipts, were there?
I'm going to disagree a little bit, only from a standpoint of, I have an evidence bag that they've been placed in. My name is placed on it, and then who I got it from, and then to me. And when I take it from me to somewhere else, then it's logged on to that evidence chain there, which that receipt does have it on the bag when I put it in evidence, when I had it out of evidence.
And it was 2.5 years later.
In my office, yes.
Okay.